Okay, he's checking it.
So you're gonna have to use the
Where's
computer
your-
mic.
Are you using your old mic, Barry?
I'm using my regular mic. Give me just a second.
He's checking something. Say that again. He can or can't?
Okay, can she hear me now? Can you hear me now, Miss Letty?
Yes.
She can.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. Evidently, the mic was muted. Camera doesn't work. We're using the on-screen or on-board camera of a computer, and the mic wasn't working, so I'll re-say what I just said. Lesson number 8, Torah 201. In order to get a certificate to complete this course, you need to finish up any non-completed, incompleted quizzes, whatever word works. Dates, September 17th and 24th. Those are the 2 nights that we will do Torah 301, 2 classes. Okay? We are celebrating, observing Yom Teruah on the 22nd, on Monday evening. So the 24th will be the first available. I'm out of town the previous week and can't do it then. So the 17th, 24th of September. I anticipate those classes to be about an hour and 15 to 30 minutes long. It's going to be a lot to cover. All right. So let's go with the blessing of the patriarchs. And we begin with the idea that Abraham was chosen for a purpose. We often greet somebody with the phrase, "Hey, how are you?" Right? And we've all been trained mostly to respond, "I'm blessed." Well, their smiles and joyful expressions try to convey the fact that I'm actually, or they are actually blessed or enjoying the status of being blessed. But what blessing in that context are we talking about? Because there is more, or there are more than one. There are more than one blessings. There are many. In fact, there are 3, and you need to write these down because they're on your quiz. They are the Brakah, the Bakira, and Bakora.
Is that up there? I can't spell those.
There
Thank
are.
you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to move this up to where I can actually see what's on the screen. Tonight is more of a technical challenge than anticipated. The Brakah, the Bakira, Bakora. Each of these have different qualities and prophetic ramifications, and they are uniquely given according to what the recipient or who the recipient is. Now, this is not on your quiz, but it's a good fact. Yah always has a process in mind when he grants his promises or prophetic blessings. No one gets a blessing or a prophetic calling or promise without some sort of intermediate challenge or process in order to get to the place where what's promised or prophesied takes place. So after the unsuccessful attempts of the nations to go in to build a tower and religious system of their own making, Yah chooses one man out of the entire earth who had a heart of truth or for truth, and who sought out the Creator in order to follow him. Avram or Abraham was blessed or chosen to direct mankind back into the proper direction. Towards this goal, he was also promised a special land, not as a reward for seeking Yah, but rather as a vehicle to fulfill his purpose. The land of Israel is not necessarily what we would call a reward for seeking him, but rather it is the vehicle to get our mission accomplished. So Yah has set aside a special location, and then he designates a special nation to represent him and become a model nation that will inspire nations and spark their spiritual development. Historically, what happens in the creation of a nation is that some group of people center themselves in a geographical location, and they take commonality of thought pertaining to culture and language and so forth, and they form a government to rule over themselves, and they create a nation. That's not what Yah did in creating Israel. He called out a particular family, people, brought them to a land and gave them a mission, not to build a government, but to become a people that would influence not just one government, but all the governments in the earth. So we go back to a root verse that we've used many times, Bereshit 12:2, where Yah says to Avram, "And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." In verses 6 and 7, we read, "And Avram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh." Notice that it says, at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. He was in a land that did not belong to him. He was promised the land, or told to come look at this land, but the land was not his. It belonged to somebody else, or at least it was being ruled over or run over, as the case may be, by the Canaanites. And then it says in the next verse, "And Yahweh appeared to Avram and said," key verse, "To your seed I give this land." And he built there a slaughter place to Yahweh who had appeared to him. The promise is, to your seed I give this land. The promise Yah makes is to a man who is dwelling in someone else's land and who has no children. So he is now blessed to have, this is on your test, on your quiz, he has a blessing of the Zerah, the seed, and Haaretz, the land. Remember, he doesn't own this land, but he's promised the land. He has no children, but he is promised seed. This blessing is the Bakira. The Bakira is the land, the seed and the land, on your quiz. The seed and the land. Bakira means choice in Hebrew, and it speaks of Yahweh's special blessings to Abraham, that his offspring, that is his Zerah or his seed, would be chosen to inherit the promised land, the Eretz. Eretz is the Hebrew, Zerah is the Hebrew, the seed and the land. Another key point, again, on your quiz is only Yah may bestow this blessing. Man cannot confer this blessing on another man. Only Yah can confer this blessing. The blessing of the Bakira. So Avram and Sarai should quickly start to have a bunch of kids, and the inhabitants of the land should start either moving out or selling their land to him according to this promise, but obviously neither one of those took place. Why? Because things don't happen that fast. When God gives you a promise, when God gives you a blessing, it rarely ever immediately manifests. It's going to take a process to prepare you for the blessing. So if you receive a prophetic word from someone that Yah is about to bless you with extravagant income or whatever, don't expect your next paycheck to be triple what it has normally been. It might even be less, more taxes taken out. You may enjoy some times of financial struggle before the blessing appears, because he's teaching you to be frugal with what you have so you don't squander what you get. That's good teaching right there, even if it's not in the notes. So Avram and Lot, his nephew, became wealthy while they were down in Mitzrayim. And when they returned to the land, they found that the land was not capable of allowing them to dwell together. So quarreling broke out among the shepherds. And Avram, not having any children, your quiz may ask you, he may have considered that Lot would be his heir, and that Lot would be the fulfillment of being his zera, his seed. But again, that's not Yah's plan. Lot was not his plan. Lot leaving Avram would be the first of several that would leave, lest they compete for the promise that was not theirs. When you have a blessing, when you have a promise, it very well could be that Yah starts weeding people out of your life because there would only be competition from them for what he's wanting to give you. Don't be shocked. So Avram addresses Lot, and he offered either north or south. You go north, I'll go south. You go south, I'll go north. I'll go in the opposite direction. But Lot, you choose which way you want to go. Bereshit chapter 13. 13, verse 10 and 11. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Mitzrayim as you go towards Sor. So Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan, and look what he did. He did not go north, he did not go south, he went east. That was not an original option, but that's what he chose. Why? He looked out for what looked like the blessings of Egypt or Mitzrayim, with a river flowing for his flocks. The river Nile and Mitzrayim supply the water. I've got the river Jordan in this area. That's what I want. Yah's means of living in the land is for you to trust him to send rain in its season. And that's what Abraham ended up with, trusting Yah that in the early and latter rains they would come on time and supply the land's need of water. So in Bereshit 13, we continue with verses 14 through 16. After Lot had separated from him, Yahweh said to Abram, now lift your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward in all directions. For all the land which you see, I shall give to you and your seed forever. He is affirming, recommitting himself to the Bechira for Avram, but he has just increased the dimensions of the Bechira. And he said, and I shall make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then your seed also could be counted. He is saying this to a man who is gaining in age and has no children. And Avram's got to be looking around like, where'd all the kids go? I don't have any. With Lot now departed, Avram assumes that Eliezer. On your quiz, his name is spelled Eliezar. Eliezer. Yes, it's on your test.
Elizar.
Eliezar. And who is his chief servant, he assumes that he is to become his heir, but all this land is for Avram's own physical seed and heir, not his servants. In Bereshit 15, verse 3 through 5. And Avram said, you have given me no seed, he's talking to Yah, and see, one born in my house is my heir. And see, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. And he brought him outside and said, now look toward the heavens and count the stars if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. He is saying to a man who has no children, who is getting older every day, whose wife is way beyond natural expectations of childbearing, you're going to have so many kids, they're going to be as numerous as the stars. And Avram's got to be shaking his head like, I just don't know how that's possible. But the next verse says that he believed Yahweh and it was counted to him as righteousness. To seal this promise, Yah establishes his covenant, a blood covenant with Avram. So Yah is ratcheting up, taking it up to another level, this promise, this Bekira, and he's going to seal it with a blood covenant in chapter 15, verse 8 and 9. And Avram asked, Master Yahweh, whereby do I know that I possess it? And he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Now, why these particular offerings? What's special about this? The bullock references perhaps the bull of Yom Kippur, which is offered up for Aaron or the high priest and his family. This blood is placed on the mercy seat and the Holy of Holies. And this covenant speaks of access to the very throne of Elohim. So the one who receives the blessing of the land and the seed, we may be hinting here that they're going to have access to the Most High's very presence. The goat references perhaps the Korban for Israel's sins on Yom Kippur. The ram references the Olah offering, the ascension offering of Yom Kippur. Did you miss something there, Laura?
I didn't finish the one before that.
Okay. And then the ram is the Olah, or the ascension offering of Yom Kippur. And since we're talking about an heir, the 2 birds reference then perhaps the offering that a mother brings upon the birth of a male child. Now, if all of this is so, we should understand that there is a connection between this covenant of cutting of pieces and Yom Kippur. Now, it is the covenant of the pieces that Yahweh walks down as a smoking oven and a burning torch, revealing, if you fail to keep the tenets of this covenant, I'm the one that will pay the price. I take the responsibility of your failure and will pay the penalty of death for you failing. Yom Kippur is that solemn day, that appointed time that reestablishes the validity of Israel as the covenant people of Yah. determining that those who are included and written in the book of life and those who are excluded and written in the book of death. So Yom Kippur, it is about a restoring, a forgiving, a reestablishing yearly this people as Israel, forgiving their sins, availing the presence of Yah again to them, and sealing them in the book of life. Because Yah doesn't want to give the Bekira, the blessing of the seed and the land, to someone who ends up disqualified. Then who does it go to? He must protect, guard, establish, redeem, and atone for this one particular lineage. And he's committed to doing so. Yom Kippur is when that takes place. Now, Avram is informed that his descendants will continue this process of receiving the fullness of the blessing of the Bekira. It's not just in you, it's in your descendants that it's going to continue. He says in chapter 15, verse 18, on the same day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, I have given this land to who? Your seed. From the river of Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Euphrates. He's just given him a clue. Not only do you hold the Bekira, it's going to be passed down to your descendants. Now, the only question that remains is, who is Abraham's seed? The first candidate is from his handmaid, Hagar, a son by the name of Ishmael. Yah visits Avram and Sarai to change their names, and he's adding the letter He to their names. He, meaning it's a reference to the Ruach. It's to see, to be revealed, the breath of Yah. He's breathing on them. He's changing them. And the exalted father becomes a father to a multitude, and the princess becomes a woman of nobility. Now, Ishmael is hanging out in their camp. He's approaching 13 years of age. He is heir apparent because as of yet, now Abraham and Sarah have no children. Not yet. But in chapter 17, verse 7 through 10, we read, Yah says, I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be Elohim to you and your seed after you. As he's hearing this word, Abraham has to be thinking, Ishmael, it's my only seed. It's all the seed I got. And he said, I shall give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, even to 2025 when they're still trying to take the land away from them. And I shall be their Elohim. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout their generations. Again, he's thinking Ishmael. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised. That same day, Abraham, Ishmael, and every male in his company were all circumcised. Ishmael, the father of the Arabic peoples, was circumcised. Why? Because Abraham just knew that's my seed. He's the one that's going to inherit and receive the continuing ownership of this land. So, in verse 18 and 19, Abraham said to Elohim, oh, let Ishmael live before you. This is wonderful. My son Ishmael. And Elohim said no. Now, he had to be shocked right there. and even more shocked when he said, Sarah, your wife, is truly bearing a son to you, and you shall call his name Yitzhak, and I shall establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. Sarah? And he has to be thinking, have you seen Sarah lately? She's old. She's postmenopausal. She's not capable of having children. And of course, we understand from other teaching that I've offered you, the next chapter she finds out, and why he didn't tell her before Yah told her, we don't know, but it's not good. And so in verse 21, he says, my covenant I establish with Yitzhak, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this appointed time next year. He's getting a clue. He needs to romance his wife because we're going to have a baby. It has been said that Israel did not begin with a common land, but rather with a common goal or destiny. Yah placed Abraham in a certain land that was occupied by other people. It wasn't immediately his land, but the goal was already stated. Abraham and his seed were to be blessed of Yah and become a blessing to all nations. It wasn't Ishmael, but Yitzhak who would accomplish this. Yah says Ishmael is also going to be a large nation, but he also told him it's going to be rooted in its wild ancestor. Yah's mission for the children of Abraham would be accomplished by disciplines and boundaries and commands and trust in Yah. That's Yah's path. Discipline, boundaries, commandments, and trust. The only other available path, that of Ishmael, that which Abraham initially was preferring, was too wild, too violent, and too warlike to be Yah's choice. If Ishmael had received the Bechira, the Middle East would be ruled forever by war and violence. And you might say, well, isn't that the case now? There is a time coming that the war will stop and the shalom reign, the reign of shalom, will take place. And they will be beating their war weapons into plowshares and agricultural implements. So Yitzhak is the choice. So let's look at the role of Yitzhak. How does this happen? Abraham actually had, and this will be a number you want to remember for your quiz, Abraham had 8 sons. Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. Okay. Ishmael, Yitzhak, Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Yishbak, and Shula.
Star Wars characters.
No, they're not on your test. The number is the names are not. But out of all of these, only one son could be recognized as his firstborn, and thus the heir of Abraham. And as the firstborn, this is on your test, he would receive the Bakora. The Bakora is the double portion of inheritance destined for the firstborn.
Which person got that? The first, Yitzhak.
Who was born first to Abraham? Ishmael. Who received the firstborn status? Yitzhak. Here's a clue. It's not on your quiz, but it's a good thing to write down. The firstborn is not always born first. The firstborn is not always born first. It's not a status, it's a state of being. There's a difference. In Devarim 21, verse 17, we read, "But he is to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the mishpat bechorah is his." That's a commandment. The bechorah belongs to the firstborn. So we go back to Bereshit and pick up the narrative again in chapter 25. Verse 5 and 6 says, "Now Abraham gave all that he had to Yitzhak." He's the Bekorah. He is the heir, not just heir apparent. He is now the heir. He is received as, acknowledged as the firstborn, being the firstborn son of the primary bride, Sarah, and not the firstborn son of one of the two concubines. And he says, continuing, "But to the sons of the concubines whom Abraham had," that would be Hagar and Keturah, "Abraham gave gifts while he was still living and sent them away from his son Yitzhak eastward to the land of the east." Why would he do that? Why did he send his children away? So that they could not hang around and compete with Yitzhak for what was to be his. After Abraham died, the role of the heir was now upon Yitzhak. He has to continue this. He has the father's blessing, as we'll see a little later, the brakah. The brakah is the father's blessing. He has the Bekorah, but as of yet, he doesn't have the Bekira. Like his father, Yitzhak faced a time of famine in the land. And like his father, he decided to go down to Mitzrayim until the famine was over. But Yah said, "No, I've got a different plan. You're to stay in this land. You are to go to the Philistines, to Gerar, but no further." So in Bereshit 26, verse 2 through 5, Yahweh appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Mitzrayim. Live in the land which I command you. Sojourn in this land, and I shall be with you and bless you." Well, looky here. "For I give all these lands to you and your seed. And I shall establish the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. I'm going to continue the Bekira that I gave to Abraham in you. I'm going to choose you, your seed, and give you all this land." He just received the Bekira. And he continues, "I shall increase your seed like the stars of the heavens." Same promise he made to Abraham. "And I shall give all these lands to your seed." And then he says what he said to Abraham, "And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed." So there is a complete continuation of the blessings placed upon Abraham into the next generation on Yitzhak, almost word for word. Why does he choose to do this? Because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my laws, and my Torah, my Torot. Abraham was so faithful that Yah rewarded the next generation because of him. We want to live such a life that our children and grandchildren are favored and blessed because of the walk that we have. So Yah just bestowed upon Yitzhak the Bekira, the covenant of the seed and the land. And again, only Yah may bestow this blessing. That's on your quiz. The only one that can bestow the blessing is Yah. The drama continues. Esau, or Yaakov and Esau. While they were in their mid-teens, if you do the timeline study, Abraham would have died when they were about 15 years of age. We see Yaakov cooking red lentils, which is known as mourner's stew. Somebody died. It very well could be that the occasion was that Abraham, their grandfather, had passed. Esau comes into the camp. He's been out in the fields and he says, I'm starving to death. I'm going to die. I'm so hungry. In chapter 25, verses 30 through 34, Esau said to Yaakov, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. One way of reading the Hebrew is pour some of that red stuff down my throat. He's a very coarse man. This is why his name is called Edom, or red. But Yaakov said, sell me your birthright today. Perhaps Grandpa dying has got him thinking about what happens when Daddy dies. Who's going to get what? Esau said, look, I'm going to die, so why should I have a birthright? And Yaakov said, swear to me today. And he swore to him and sold his birthright to Yaakov. And in brackets, you could put for a bowl of lentil soup. Yaakov then gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank and rose up and left. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Birthright's birthright. I don't care. It's not important to me. What you got to eat. When it came time for Yitzhak to pass on his blessing, Rebekah, knew that Esau should not inherit, even though he was technically the firstborn. Question is, did she know that Esau had sold his birthright to her other son? Did she know? What Rivkah does know is the prophecy given to her before her sons were born. That's found in Bereshit 25:23. Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 people shall be separated from your body, and 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Now, we put this in the context of we're trying to build a nation. We're trying to get to the place where children have multiplied like the stars in the heavens, the dust of the earth, in order to obtain the fullness of the land and hold it and continue the lineage of the seed. We've got 2 sons. Are both of them chosen for that purpose? Will both of them work together to get this thing accomplished? Or will it be as it was in the previous generation? Will one son be taken and the others dispersed and sent away? Yah gave her a clue. There's not one nation in your womb revealed in 2 people, but there's 2 different nations. Only one of them can be chosen. Only one. So for another generation, one is to receive the blessing and the other one is not. And right now, it looks like, in her estimation, from the prophecy, that the wrong son is about to receive a blessing, and she cannot allow that to happen. Yitzhak is probably thinking that his blessing, the father's blessing, the brakah, what is that? It is headship and leadership of the family. So we've identified what is the Bekira, the Bekora, and now we're understanding what is the Brakah. It is a blessing from the Father granting headship and leadership of the family to his heir. He's thinking that this belongs to Esau, because at this time, Esau is now 60 years old. He's married. He has a home. He has a rugged lifestyle that is firm enough and supplied enough to handle life situations. And he's a man's man to be in charge. He's also thinking Yaakov is 60 years old. He's still at home. He's never launched yet. He's not married, and he doesn't have any means of self-support. Do you see the reason and rationale for Yitzhak's thinking? It's the obvious choice. It's Esau. Based on physical realm evidences, that's a reasonable thought process. But this blessing is not just physical, it's spiritual. And so things have to change. Rivka then knows that if Esau is a different nation, he can't be the continuing lineage of Abraham for greater blessings. She intervenes. She helps Yaakov impersonate Esau. He goes in before Yitzhak and he receives the bracha, the favor, the prosperity, and the political family leadership. That's what Yitzhak is offering. The father's blessing. This blessing does indeed belong to Yaakov because Esau sold his birthright to him many years ago. Esau was thinking, I'll repent when it's necessary and still get the blessing that I want. It didn't work out that way. So because he despised it and sold it cheap, he's now sitting in daddy's tent weeping and wailing when he is replaced, and he asks for any other available blessing. You got another blessing, daddy, you can pull out of your pocket and give to me? What do I get? And among the words he hears, you are to live by your sword and you will serve your brother. Esau's mad enough now to not only eat skunk, he's going to kill his brother. And says so. So with Esau plotting to kill Yaakov, Yitzhak sends Yaakov away with additional favor and blessing. He adds to the blessing now in chapter 28, verse 3 and 4. He says, and El Shaddai bless you and make you fruitful and increase you, and you shall become an assembly of peoples, and give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your seed with you, so that you inherit the land of your sojournings, which Elohim gave to Abraham. It sounds like that Yitzhak is trying to give him the Bekira, but he can't do it. Only Yah can give this blessing. But what he is doing is acknowledging Yaakov's role as the Bekora as well. You are my firstborn state of being son. And now the double portions of blessings will fall upon you. Well, what about the Bekira? What happens to that? Chapter 28, verse 13 and 14. And so Yahweh stood above it, above the ladder or the stairway that Yaakov saw. And he said, I am Yahweh Elohim of Abraham your father, and the Elohim of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying, here we go, I give it to you and your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall break forth to the west and the east, the north and the south. That's the same directions that he told Abraham to look, and he would receive that land. And all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. It's a continuation of the Abrahamic blessings, including now, Yaakov has just received the Bekira. It goes to another single individual for the third time. And again, only Yah may bestow this blessing And he did. Now, Yaakov is not any different than those before him. He's going to experience a time of trouble, and he will be exiled away from the land for a time. Abraham was exiled for a while. Yitzhak exiled for a while. Now Yaakov's going to live in exile for a while. He ends up with 4 wives, 12 sons, 1 daughter, but not without the same family dysfunction that has been in previous generations. It's amazing that the patriarchs are still those that are causing favor and blessing in the earth, and every one of their homes was dysfunctional. And not just a little bit. So if your house is dysfunctional, Yah can still use you.
Amen.
I got some amens in the house. I don't know where they came from.
I'll raise my hand.
In preparation to encounter Esau, Yaakov spends a night in spiritual warfare, and he's wrestling with a physically manifested spiritual being. What is this contest about? What is he wrestling over? The identity. Who will become Israel? Now, I will drop in my theory. It's my theory, not my doctrine, my theory. We talked about doctrine last week. This is my theory. Most people will say that he was wrestling with the pre-incarnate Yeshua or the messenger of Yah. I believe he was wrestling with the spirit of Esau. Esau was still trying to gain the upper hand and claim the spiritual title Israel. After the wrestling match, he says, Yaakov, you have prevailed. Before the wrestling match, Esau came armed with 400 men ready to kill him. After the wrestling match, Esau was broken and wept on his shoulder. There was a change in the man. That's my theory. If you disagree, that's fine. Who is Israel? In chapter 32, verse 26 through 28. But he said, Yaakov said, I'm not letting go until you have blessed me. Now, what further blessing did he need? He had the Brakah, the Bakora, and the Bakira. He's already got all 3 of these blessings. What is it that he's looking for? So he asked him, so what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. And he said, your name is no longer Yaakov, but Israel. My opinion, the spirit of Esau says, you have obtained the title. You have prevailed. You have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome. I acknowledge, I say, uncle, you get the title. So it's the title and the name of Israel. That's what he was looking for. He already had the other 3 blessings. Now it's going to get interesting. You got 12 sons or tribes. Who gets what? How does this work with all these kids? Up to this point, 1 son per generation gets the lion's share of blessings, and the other sons are given token blessings and sent away. At some future point, though, the blessings need to become corporate in order to establish more than 1 blessed son, but rather a blessed nation. As long as it's generationally just 1 son out of ever how many, we're never going to build a nation. When does this pattern stop? So now that there are 12 sons, there is a belief that a nation can now become a reality. This would require, however, a more equitable distribution of blessings and the proper designation of the firstborn to receive the Bakora. We got to make sure that whichever one of these sons is declared the firstborn is capable of being the firstborn. So we look at what the word says in chapter 37, verse 2 through 4. This is the genealogy of Yaakov. It should have started with Reuben. It didn't. Matter of fact, it only mentions one son out of the 12. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. Genealogy of Yaakov, Joseph, that's it. The young man was with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father. Why is he hanging out with the concubine's sons? Could be that he's already worn himself out with the sons of Leah. They don't want him around anymore, so he's down now to the sons of the concubines. And Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children. Oh no. Because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. This does not sound like it's going to end well. Because at this point, 11 brothers are looking at Joseph, who is now heir apparent, walking around in the special outfit, and thinking, Joseph's going to get it all, and Daddy's going to send us all away, and we get nothing but token gifts. And they're not going to put up with it. Something is going to change. So this issue was more than an irritating personality or a spoiled child. It was the obvious choice of Yaakov to elevate Joseph, the 11th born son, to firstborn Bekora status. Think about that. The sons of Abraham were born from 3 different women. Only Sarah was the primary bride. Hagar and Keturah were concubines. A concubine is a legal wife. She is legally a wife, but she has secondary wife status. There is a primary bride ahead of her who has a ketubah and whose children are considered first in the distribution of heir, being heir. The concubines of Yaakov were Bilhah and Zilpah. Their sons were Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And those 4 men probably knew, because that their mothers were concubines, secondary wives, they're out of the running. We're probably not going to get the Bekora. Doesn't look good on that. Leah was first married, but secondary wife, while her sister Rachel enjoyed a primary wife status. Because Yaakov covenanted with their father to get Rachel and was deceived with Leah first. She bore 6 sons, and all 6 of her sons were born before Joseph. Certainly one of her boys is going to receive the Bekora, be called the firstborn, get the double portion, and receive the best of the father's blessing. That's the way it would look like on paper. Of those sons, the natural leader was Yehudah, son number 4. Reuben, the actual firstborn, was unstable, inconsistent, and definitely not a leader. Shimon, the secondborn, was a hothead who was ruled by his temper. Levi couldn't be trusted to hang out with Shimon because he also was a bloodletter and a violent man. Yehudah was the guy that came along and just everybody followed because he's a leader. The brothers were willing to go to any effort necessary to keep Yaakov from blessing Joseph, giving him every blessing and then sending the other 11 off with tokens. No claim of being Israel, no attempt to be the prophesied nation. So they took matters into their own hands. They got rid of Joseph. What the brothers did not expect is that once they got rid of Joseph, not actually knowing what did happen to him, because Ishmaelites poured him out of the pit, not them. They bloodied his coat, took it to Yaakov, presented it to daddy, telling him it looks like your son's been eaten by a wild animal. At least that's Yaakov's conclusion. What they did not anticipate was that daddy would withdraw, go into a dark depression, and not offer anything to anyone as being next in line. Dad's in no shape to offer anything to anybody. It looks like we blew apart our own boat and we're sunk. That's the way it looks. And it's a very depressed atmosphere, so much that Yehuda says, I'm out of here. There's nothing to be gained by staying here. And you read that whole chapter about his going down and his downfalls. So we go to chapter 37, verse 34 and 35. Yaakov tore his garments. He put sackcloth on his waist. He mourned for his son many days. All of his sons and all of his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, this is what they heard him say, now let me go down into Sheol to my son in mourning. So his father wept for him. I'm going to die. I'm not thinking about blessings. Now all is lost, and the nations would only be a forgotten dream until Joseph was revealed and restored to Israel. That is extremely prophetic. There is no inheritance of the land and continuation of the seed as Yah would desire until Joseph, the house of Joseph, has now been revealed, and the blessing of the Bekira of the land and the sea will be realized when we are restored to Israel status. That's yet to take place. We're being revealed. We're just not fully restored yet. Israel, once he had been made aware of Joseph's being alive, he goes down to Mitzrayim. There's great rejoicing. The whole company of the family goes down. Joseph is alive. They meet, they fall on each other's neck, and they weep for a long period of time. Yaakov's 130 years old. He's met Pharaoh. He's lived to see other generations rise up in Mitzrayim. And he's getting ready to die. So it says that he called for Joseph to come see him before his death. And Joseph went, in chapter 48, and he brought two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him. Something happens that Joseph's not anticipating. Israel, Yaakov, adopts these grandsons and grants them first generation status. In chapter 48 in verse 5, and now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Mitzrayim, before I came to you in Mitzrayim, they're mine. As Reuben and Shimon, they are mine. What did he just do? These grandsons are now in equal status as being my own sons. What else did he do? He just gave Joseph the Bekora, the double portion blessing. His single blessing as an individual son is now doubled, and two tribes replace one. He just received the Bekora. Israel then elevates the younger son, Ephraim, above the elder Manasseh. Again, firstborn status doesn't mean you were born first. He blesses Ephraim with a miraculous increase in a prophetic destiny. He says, you are to become the Melo HaGoyim. What does that mean, your quiz will ask? It is the fullness, or you can say the completion of the nations. Again, the family of Israel has a mission to influence, affect, and bless the nations. The nations don't want anything to do with Israel. Not modern day Israel, but Yah says, those people and my people Israel around the world, they're going to rule the earth, and they're going to be a blessing to all nations. Watch him do it. Ephraim then is the entity that the original blessing of Abraham to be a blessing for all nations is to come to pass. It's Ephraim. The house of Israel, the house of Joseph, Ephraim, they're all synonymous terms. Finally, in chapter 49, Israel gathers all of his sons, and he bestows the father's bracha upon each one according to what he prophetically envisions for them. So each of the sons receives a bracha. Joseph has received the brachora. What about the Bakira? What happens to that? Well, first of all, let's acknowledge the political leadership is given to Yehuda, the natural born leader. The scepter will not depart from him. The double portion, Bakora, is given to Joseph, as we've just stated. Spiritual leadership is initially distributed among the tribes for the time being. When they get to Mount Sinai, they're to be a nation of priests. Levi ends up with that, but not initially. So for Yaakov's bracha, spiritual leadership, all the tribes have an element of spirituality about them. So, again, we ask the question, who receives the Bakira? The nation of Israel does. How so? I'm glad you asked that question. In the book of Shemot, or Exodus 3, verse 6 through 8, Yah is speaking, and he says, I am the Elohim of your father. He's speaking to Moshe. The Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Yitzhak, and the Elohim of Yaakov. And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look at Elohim. And Yahweh said, I have indeed seen the oppression of my people who are in Mitzrayim, and heard their cry because of their slave drivers, for I know their sorrows. And I have come to deliver them from the hands of the Mitzrites. And he says, bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Why did he go through all the ites? Because that's the same groups of people that he said that he would give the land of to Abraham all the way back in Genesis, Bereshit 15. When he said, your descendants are going to go down for 400 years. I'm going to bring them up and give them the land from the river Mitzrayim to the river Euphrates. And he named all these same people. What is he saying? I am giving the land to this family. And then he says in chapter 3, verse 10, and now come, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Mitzrayim. He's just acknowledged that Israel is his seed and that they're going to get the land. At this point, he is not, if not emphatically stated it, he is also strongly hinted to Moshe. This people have the Bechira. It's not an individual, it's a nation. So the nation of Israel has received the Bechira. And again, only Yah can bestow this blessing. So that is the blessing, or those are the blessings of the patriarchs. The thing is, these blessings are what are shaping the geopolitical climate of the Middle East and the nations to this day. The descendants of Ishmael, who claim Abraham as their father, are also claiming that they should have received the Bechorah and they're the rightful heirs to the Bechira. They should be the seed. They should have the land. That's what they believe. The descendants of Esau, likewise, who are found in professional churchdom, are laying claim. We replaced the Jews. We're the ones who should have the land. We built our buildings and our churches there. It belongs to us. We are the replacement seed. And Yah is still saying, no, not going to work that way. Okay, so that's the conclusion of the class part, the teaching part. We have just 5-10 minutes here if you want to ask questions or make comments. You want to have anything?
Is that in the Quran that Ishmael's descendants are receiving the land?
That's what they want. I mean, that's what.
Do they claim that is true?
Yeah, I mean,
do they honestly
that's
believe that they are? That they
for example,
serve?
Hamas and those in Gaza are saying that land, we have to drive the Jews out because that land belongs to us. They're surrounded by Arabic people all the way around. And they stand in contrast by lineage and genetics. You know, Ishmael is part Egyptian and part Hebrew. But then he was given a wife from Mitzrayim or Egypt. So his lineage is more Egyptian than anything else. But he still claims Abraham as their father. And they, we're the Abrahamic religions are three. There's a Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all claim Abraham. But the Arabs believe that they are the rightful heirs to that land, that it should be theirs.
Am I remembering rightly that they still recognize the scriptures, our scriptures, as being true?
That I do not know. Historically, they have treated the Bible, the scriptures, with disdain, desecrating it, violating it. Anyone else? Then we'll go back to Sydney. Anybody else got a question or comment? Hannah?
Why is the firstborn not always the firstborn? Born first.
Nathan is the physical firstborn of your family, right? Because he's the oldest child. Doesn't mean necessarily that he is the spiritual firstborn. Go all the way back to Cain and Abel. Cain was born first. Abel or Havel was the one, though, that was more spiritually astute and would have really have had firstborn status. Same thing with Esau and Yaakov. Same thing with Yitzhak and Ishmael. Same thing with Joseph over the other brothers. It's not necessarily who's firstborn, but firstborn is a spiritual state. not necessarily a physical state. Maybe I can say it that way. But that's a good question. Cindy.
I'm reading first hit from Google, and this comes from exploreislam.com. What does the Quran say? In Islam, it is one of the 6 articles of faith to believe in all the books revealed by God, including those given to previous prophets. For example, Muslims believe that Allah revealed the Torah to Moses, the Zabur or Psalms to David, and the Injil, the Gospel, to Jesus.
I believe that.
Well, do they practice that?
Nope.
Not really.
No, they'll place a mass outside of Jerusalem, and they're praying towards Mecca. So they have the posteriors,
Toward the Temple Mount.
Jerusalem.
Yep.
So they're very antagonistic.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now, The Sword and the Scimitar, and it chronicles in detail the history of Islam as it attacks Christianity or Christendom at that point, and they made no qualms whatsoever about they desecrated what was considered holy relics, the scriptures. They slaughtered Jews. They just they were a very violent, slaughtering people. Still are, especially in Africa right now.
It's sort of like it's an experiment by the Catholic Church that went wrong.
That is a very credible theory. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Going back, I'm reading another blog from Islam Compass, Serving Islam Until Almighty Allah is Pleased with Us Permanently. Okay, that's the source. The Bible scholars have stated the Bible is corrupted. And so what was originally given to those prophets has been corrupted in the Jewish Bible.
Uh-huh. That it would have necessarily agreed with the Quran, but it doesn't agree with the Quran, so therefore it's corrupted. They will tell you that they believe in Jesus.
But they believe in him as a prophet, not as the Messiah.
They believe that he will be subservient to Muhammad and that he will become a great Islamic warrior and he will force Christians to convert to Islam.
Okay, back to another. How am I understanding you rightly to say that Esau's spirit took physical form to wrestle with Jacob?
That's what I think.
How? So a human spirit can separate and then take physical form?
There are those who have practiced that ability and would testify to it. Yeah. It's not. We'll talk more about that off camera. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Let's offer a word of prayer. And don't forget your quizzes. Mark down the dates of September 17th and 24th. We look forward to seeing you on Shabbat. And there is also a discussion board available on Canvas that if you want to go in and talk among yourselves and make comments and discuss among yourselves, that's what that's there for. All right. Abba Yahweh, we bless you for your word. We bless you for your blessings. That they're still alive, well, and functional in the earth and upon your people. May you bring to complete fulfillment all of your plan concerning your people Israel, that we would indeed be a blessing to all nations. Do your work, O Yah, and thank you that you choose to do it, at least in part, through us. Thank you for a safe return to our homes, and Father, for what you're planning for Shabbat. In the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for being a part of Torah 201.